Good morning. I'm Kathy Wetters, and I'm joined by co-host Jim Wojciechowski, who is disguised his voice this morning, and Jeanette Palmer. And our guest today, and we were just talking about this. I believe she may have the record for the most times on our show. And we're so excited to have her back. And this first time in 2017, Nancie Dorjath with Dorjath Law Center.
Thank you very much for having me back. It's always a pleasure to be here.
So maybe if you would just, for those that haven't heard you speak before, is kick off a little bit about how you got in your practice, and then we'll kind of move into the three topics.
Yeah. So I have been an attorney for the last 19 years, but my background is I was a Chicago kid, born and raised Chicago, and I was raised multi-generational. So I was raised with my, what I call busha, so I'm Polish, so I was raised with my busha, and I did what...
Yakshimash.
Tak, dzień dobry, tak. And I did what every good Chicago kid did. You moved across the street after you got married. So I moved across the street, and then my busha would come across the street every day and babysit my kids while I went to law school. Well, unfortunately, she ended up getting dementia, and I couldn't really care for her anymore after I had my 3 kids. And when the elder law profession and the law opened up, it was just the right fit for me, because unfortunately my family was part of not understanding what's really out there, what questions we should have asked, who we should have asked for help, and what guidance was out there. And there was no one out there to help us. So when she finally had to, again, go into a nursing home for her memory issues, no one told us what we should have had in place. No one talked about powers of attorney. No one talked about Medicaid. No one talked about protecting assets. So from my point of view, when she needed... Unfortunately, she lost her dentures in the nursing home. We don't know whether or not she threw them out, if someone took them, what happened. Sure. Well, if you qualify for Medicaid and we didn't protect assets, guess what? There's no money to buy the dentures. So at the end of her life, how do we treat the people we love the most with the less dignity? With not having teeth, not having glasses, not having hearing aids. So for me, it was my mission. It's my passion that I love my seniors. They taught me how to polka. They taught me how to crochet. I still make homemade pierogies every Christmas. So it's a big part of who we are. It's a big part of my life. So when the elder law profession came on, it was really my calling. It was really my mission to really help seniors and their families, because we were unfortunately on the other end. We didn't have anyone help us or guide us. And we saw what happens when you don't. And so for us, it is the reason why I opened up my own practice, because I wanted to help families very differently than other law firms do. Actually, I'll go out to clients' homes for no extra charge, same charges if they came, because I know my grandmother would not have come to an attorney's office. She was scared, she was intimidated, and she was starting to slip. And if you took her out of her environment, it made it worse.
Absolutely, yes.
So again, for me to offer that to clients, I thought was what everyone should have, without even thinking about it. So it's something that I did. So yeah, so that's how my firm came into being. It's just part of who I am. Yeah.
And we're glad you're there. Not only is Nancie a great attorney, she's one of our close friends, and because of her passion is one of the reasons we ask her on the show as often as we can get her. So if we run out of time today talking about the subjects we want to talk about, we're going to have her back. Nancie, first of all, I want to apologize. My wife and I were going out to Israel earlier, in fact, late last year, and we called you to put in place not only a will but a power of attorney. And I am so ashamed of myself because of what we really promote here on the show is planning, and I don't have these things in place. So this is really one of the perfect subjects we can talk about. What is a power of attorney? Why and when do I need one?
Those are all great questions. And I think we need to start to rethink about these documents very differently. Because we think about them as estate planning. Oh, something's going to bad happen. We're going to die. I need these in place. I'm of the other belief. I really think they're like insurance. Like we have our car. So when we get car insurance, do we think, oh, yay, I could get in a car accident? No. It's the same thing with powers of attorney. If you get in that car accident, Jim, who's going to make you whole? who's going to make the healthcare decisions for you or the financial decisions for you if you don't have those put in place? Because someone may step up that you don't want them to make those decisions. They may not honor what your beliefs are. And to me, that's real critical, that we name people who are going to honor who we are, not who they are. So powers of attorney, there's two different types in Illinois. There's a power of attorney for healthcare. So that allows someone else to make healthcare decisions for us when we can't. So case in point, my parents were hit by drunk drivers in the city. T-boned in the middle of an intersection. Mom was in the hospital for 6 months. Dad was in the hospital for 3.
Wow.
So who makes healthcare decisions? Because they were together. So usually you name each other. Well, they have 3 kids. So you could have 3 different opinions as to what steps should be taken. My dad had his last rites. So does a procedure take place or doesn't it? Well, if you don't name someone, who does the doctor listen to? And again, this is just, it's more like insurance. And we've talked about this earlier. You've planned for your Israel trip more than we planned to get our affairs in order at home.
That's amazing. It took us 9 months to plan that trip.
Right.
So I can only imagine when I do step into Nancie's office.
How long it's going to take her to deal with you.
The talking to I'm going to get, because she's going to have 9 months to put our paperwork and our plans together.
Well, and I wish I could say you're different. You're very typical. That's very typical, because why we think about this in the wrong context. We think about it as, oh my gosh, I need it because I'm aging. And really, I lecture about this all the time. I'm an adjunct professor. I teach at COD. The requirements for these, you have to be 18 years old and breathing, a pretty low threshold. So even when our kids go away to college, we need our kids to have these documents, because as parents, we're going to want to access that information. Same thing with our loved ones. We have a lot of kids. My kids are out of state. If they want to call and get information on me, we need someone to be in control. We need someone to make those decisions. So that's the power of attorney for healthcare. We also have what's called power of attorney for property. And a lot of my clients say, well, I don't own property, so I don't need it. Unfortunately, both of these documents are what we call statutory in nature, which means our elected officials, be it as we may, have drafted these. So they really don't know what they're doing, a lot of them. So power of attorney for property, I know, it's a shocker, right?
If you're watching YouTube, you should see my face.
I know, don't get riled.
So power of attorney for property deals with everything and anything outside our person. Our mail, our banking, online accounts, our finances. So when my parents were, think about in the hospital, they didn't come home to stacks of their electric being turned off, their pension not being in the account. I'm worried about identity theft. A lot of my clients have identity theft. This power of attorney allows, let's say, their children to say, hey, mom and dad weren't in Israel. They were in a car accident. They didn't spend $20,000 there. Well, if someone doesn't have the ability to look at those documents, there are senior scams going on all the time. I lecture about this all the time. And if someone isn't able to take control and help their parents or their loved one, what do? We need to be advocates for our family members and our loved ones. If we're not their advocates, who's going to be? And sometimes it's a little too late, and when we hit crisis, you guys know this, you're in the crisis business. When we hit crisis, people don't think the same way.
Absolutely.
Right? So we really need them when they're really thinking clearly and can go home and talk about it and decide, hey, who is the best person to make healthcare decisions for me? It doesn't necessarily have to be the same person who makes financial decisions.
True.
And my husband and I have different people after each other. So, and that's okay too, because you want someone who's going to honor what your wishes are, whether you want to be cremated, whether you want to be buried, whatever those wishes are, end of life choices. You need someone who's going to honor your wishes, not their wishes. And that's a very challenging proposition sometimes for the kids to talk to their parents about, because they don't want to deal with it. Right? And my conversation is, we need to change it. We need to start talking about it at 18.
I was just going to ask that question. Yeah. When do we need
it? Again, when my kids turned 18, guess what they got for their birthday? Powers of attorney for healthcare and powers of attorney for property. Why? Because it's so critical that we end up having these documents throughout life. just not seniors. Is it more critical then? Absolutely, because the chances of something happening are greater.
Mm-hmm.
But still, look at my parents. They were hit by drunk drivers. No one planned that.
Mm-hmm.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of my son, who's a fireman and
Right.
is serving our country in the reserves. If something should happen to him, we have no idea
What his wishes are.
what his wishes
Right.
are. We need to sit down with him.
Right. And the good thing is when life changes, we could change these documents. So these documents aren't set in stone forever. So again, my son is a middle school teacher. I was his power of attorney before he got married. He got married. We had to change those documents so that his wife is now his power of attorney. So if something would happen to him, she would be the first ones to make those healthcare financial decisions. If something happened to both of them, I would be then the backup.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that brings up a natural question. Let's say you do, in your case, in that case, you do your powers of attorney in Illinois and they move to Missouri. Are they still all in effect?
They're in effect, but what I advise my clients is contact an attorney there because each state has their own nuances. For example, if we're up in Wisconsin, the Wisconsin Power of Attorney for Healthcare actually has to state on the healthcare that the agent, the person who's making that decision for him, actually has the ability to admit them into a skilled facility, a nursing home, or to an assisted living. If not, we could be forced to go to guardianship in Wisconsin. So is it critical? Absolutely. Is it going to be honored? Yes, but they may have their own rules that our documents don't cover. So is it prudent to get it looked at? Yes, without a doubt. It's worth our time. We look at our insurance when we buy a new house, right? When we move. Why shouldn't we be looking at this? Right? We're moving to a new state. We should be looking at, okay, this is part of that move. Is everything in order in the state that we live in? It's real important.
No doubt, no doubt. What does a durable power of attorney mean?
That's a good. So our states, we really don't call them durable.
Okay.
Some states call them durable. All that means is that if you become incompetent, the document is still valid. So ours are in Illinois. So we do have durable powers of attorney. It's just not in the title. Some states call them durable powers of attorney, which means they're still effective. If my parents, in their situation, my dad had his last rites, he needed surgery, he was incompetent, he couldn't make it. It's still a viable and valuable document. So again, in Illinois, we just don't put it in the title.
Okay, so if I give someone a power of attorney, does that mean I don't have control over my money or more?
Yeah. Well, again, this document, depending upon who we are and where we are in life, depends upon when do we want to make that document effective.
Mm-hmm.
So for some of my seniors, I have a 98-year-old woman whose daughter has been helping her for the last 10 years. So from that point of view, she wants that power of attorney effective immediately.
Okay.
Because again, daughter's already helping her.
Mm-hmm.
But again, for you, for I don't need that document to be effective immediately because I'm still healthy.
Sure.
So we would call that a springing power. So only when a doctor states in writing that I'm no longer able to handle my financial affairs or my healthcare decisions, only then would the agent, the person you would nominate to make those decisions, have that ability. So again, it is a lethal document, especially the financial one.
Mm-hmm.
You could, if it's effective immediately, we could go to the bank and I could go to the bank and take that money out of your bank account.
Mm-hmm.
Why? If it's effective immediately. So you do need to trust the person that you also name because
Okay.
trust is a very big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And again, if we have a child who maybe isn't as good with money, but another child who is, maybe we want to think about, well, let's examine who should your agent be.
Mm-hmm.
Should it really be your daughter who's the nurse, but maybe your son's the accountant?
Mm-hmm.
And we look at, and maybe if we don't have kids, maybe we look to siblings, maybe we look to cousins or nephews or nieces, or for that matter, even friends.
Mm-hmm.
So we want someone who's going to be able to step in and help us make those decisions when the time comes.
Okay. Let's hypothetically think of this situation. Actually, your parents might be a good one for this. They were incapacitated for a time.
Correct.
Okay, so if I put in a power of attorney and something happened to me where a doctor signed off that, say I'm unconscious, can that power of attorney then be, and somebody else takes control that I give
Right.
of my effects in my life? when I come out of being unconscious and I'm mentally capable, can I pull back my
Absolutely.
power? Okay.
Absolutely. Yes, and it depends if we're talking healthcare, if we're in a hospital,
Okay.
and it depends if we're talking about a bank. So each one, you really do need someone to help guide you through the system, because every situation is different. I truly believe everyone's story is unique. Everyone has their story. Everyone has their family dynamics. So we need to understand the family dynamics, what's going on. Healthcare, again, my mom was recently in the hospital. They wanted an additional procedure done. And she said no. And she's like, no, I'm done with procedures. I'm done. And they looked to me and I said, you know, she's competent. You may not agree with the decision someone's making, but as long as they're competent, that's a very challenging thing for the healthcare profession and for the families to deal with someone who's maybe not making the best decision, but is competent. You know what I say? The prisons are filled with them.
No doubt.
Right?
No doubt.
Right?
Yes.
So we have to think about,
Yes.
you know what? That's our right as being a human being. We have the right to make decisions.
Yes.
As long as we're not hurting ourselves or someone else, we should have that right.
Amen.
If you're, say, the senior in this case, or older adult, should we had a situation where the family members kind of almost like abdicated part of their responsibility and didn't want to be the one to decide when mom, or it was mom in this case, needed to be taken off life support or whatever. Should we give them a little like mini test before we put their name in there and ask them some questions?
Again, now there's a document called the POLST in Illinois, the Practitioner's Order for Life-Sustaining Treatment. That really took place of the old DNR in Illinois, so it's the POLST/DNR. And really that deals with end-of-life decisions. And we really do need to talk to someone if we know end of life is within the next year as to what are their wishes, or talk to the family before that decision has to be made.
Right.
Because when you have a couple of children who aren't really sure, it's a real challenging decision to make. And the doctors obviously err on the side of not ending life.
Right.
So again, we have to be pretty clear as to what your end of life wishes are. I had one of my best friend's brother was diagnosed with terminal cancer. Never married, no kids. Lived at home with mom. Well, he had this POLST document, and it said on the POLST, no chemo, no experimental radiation, no experimental treatment. Why? Because mom, I think, would have done anything to keep him alive. But that was not his wish.
Sure.
And he was young. He was 52. So again, to have his wish written down on paper so other professionals honored it is very, very important if your family is going through that at that time.
Yes, he was very explicit for that reason.
Right.
I understand.
And that was really thoughtful of him in a sense because, you know, although he was thinking of himself, he was really thinking of his mother too.
Well,
Yes.
and we live in a time where we can keep people alive longer than we may want to. And by being placed in a nursing home or being placed in a hospital, we have the ability to keep people alive. Maybe that 40, 50, 60 years ago wouldn't have made it.
Right.
So we really do need to change the conversation to talk about these things because we're all going to eventually get there. We're all eventually going to have to determine what are my end of life wishes. And I know everyone jokes, take me in the backyard and shoot me. You can't do that. So as much as we all agree with that, we can't do that. Yeah, we can't do that. And so we really do need to talk about what are our end of life wishes. And it's real challenging from my point of view for children to talk to their parents about it.
Absolutely.
The parents want to talk to their kids about it. The kids don't want to talk about it.
I don't know if the parents even want to talk about it. I don't think anybody ever wants to think that it's going to end. You know, life on Earth is always so short.
Right.
You know?
But again, if we start talking about it when we get a car and we get car insurance,
right.
If we start talking about it at 18, it won't be. My hope is it's not as taboo.
Right.
And that we can talk about it in conversation.
You have to bring this up. I just saw something on, there was a documentary on TV about Sesame Street.
Oh.
And they had a segment about death on there.
Yeah.
And I was saying, thinking to myself, we need to run that segment and everybody should see it because this was teaching a child that there is
End of life.
End of life.
And honestly, we see this with animals also.
Mhm.
When you have to make that decision with animals,
Sure.
you hear this all the time. We're more humane with our animals than we are with people.
Sure.
Yes.
So again,
No
I
doubt.
think this is life. We're all in it together. We're all partners in this. Really, we should be working towards the same thing to make it as best as it can be while we're here.
Sure.
And to talk to the families, to talk to the parents, to talk to the kids, to have them discuss this so it's not scary.
Mhm.
Because when we're in crisis, we don't think the same way. Personally, crisis is what is good for me because people have to act.
Mhm.
They can't go home, Jim,
Mhm.
and they can't think about it for 9 months. They're
Right.
in crisis.
That's right. That's
They
right.
have to act.
And
So
that's
for me,
true.
crisis is ideal.
Mhm.
But personally, I don't like to be in crisis.
Well, that's we continue to talk about planning.
Right.
And speaking of that, I have a situation. My son's a fireman paramedic, and it's very interesting. We're talking about this because one of their, and I'm talking about the fire department. A person might have a DNR or what is the new version of that?
Pulsed.
Okay, and they're not aware of it.
Right.
And so maybe you can comment on
Yeah.
what to do on this.
So when I first opened up my practice, I'm on the south side of Chicago. I'm going to this gentleman's house. I enter the gangway through the back door, up the 2 flat, into the kitchen. Walk in the kitchen. There's the pulse literally on the fridge. I'm like, yes, people are listening to me. Guess what? A doctor didn't sign this. So for this document to be valid, a doctor must sign it. So again, I tell my clients, you want to put this where the first responders are going to see it. Keeping it in the freezer, not a good idea because no one's going to move the pot roast to try and find this document. Keeping it in some sort of cabinet or file. If we're in crisis, if we know our life is going to end shortly, we want to understand what your end of life wishes are. How do we know that? So first responders come in. If our caregivers come in and you have a new caregiver and they're not familiar with what your end of life wishes are, it needs to be near that person.
Yes,
so
it
when they
does.
walk in, they're aware of what's going on. I also tell my clients, if we're in crisis, if my parents were in the hospital, my mom recently was, you always have your folder on the kitchen table, right, with all your important documents. Well, you run out of the house, you grab your purse, you forget the folder. How many times has that happened? Right? So what I tell my clients is keep that in your glove compartment. Keep the important documents in your glove compartment because if you're running to go get mom or your spouse or a loved one and you forget, you at least know you have a backup in the glove compartment.
People today can also use technology. How about
Correct.
taking pictures on your phone?
There's a couple issues with that.
Okay.
Okay. Most of our phones have password protection.
Yeah.
So again, if you are hit by a car, no one knows what your password is to get in.
Yeah, okay. Good
So
point.
it's not a bad thing for our family members to have it. But again, we need to understand there are limits and constraints because of all the password protection. And it is important HIPAA rules, right? We have important information on there that we may not want on our cell phone. We may, but we may not. You lose your phone, you have a power of attorney for property on there that gives someone access to your finances. Is that the smart thing to do? Not real sure. It's going to depend upon what situation that family is in.
That's wow. I just
Opened up a can of worms,
I'm
right?
going to have to take. Yes, you did. I'm going to have to take off my DD-214 off my phone today.
Oh, the DD-214 is a good thing. That's okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, again,
Well,
if
it
you're
still has private information on it.
it does, but at least let your family members know because if you ever need aid and attendance, that's the document we always need is
Very
the
good.
DD-214 in
Okay.
case we ever need that. Yeah.
Now, let me ask you about something that crosses, it's property, but could cross into a health care type decision. We've run into this sometimes. Guns in the home. Should that be addressed? How should that be addressed?
Well, again, I think
I
anything.
need to listen carefully
Yes.
to this.
yes, Jim. You do,
Anything
yeah.
with valuables, especially if we have home health coming in,
Right.
I think they should be removed from the house. They should be brought somewhere else. Again, I recently had, I call it the underground. I'm not sure what the terminology is, but you hire someone, a friend of a friend's mom
Right,
is coming
right.
over to help you. There was an aunt, married, no children. When they went to go find aunt's lockbox, it was gone.
Wow.
So they assumed the person that was helping aunt at home walked away with it. So you don't have to break it open. You could just walk out with it once, again, they're sleeping, they're doing something, they're not paying attention, especially if they have Alzheimer's, dementia.
Sure, yeah.
We have issues. We don't want anything important in that house.
But like the safety aspect, you know, if someone had became clinically depressed or suicidal and they had an arsenal, you know, we've had a few homes with that, and it's like, wow. You know.
Well, and again, that's where we bring the family in. That's where, again, who is your power of attorney? Who do you trust? Do you trust them enough to take your ammunition away, but maybe, you know, leave the guns? And I don't know. It's going to depend upon that family situation.
The dynamics, yeah.
Right.
Something
Right.
to think
As
about,
to, because again, you want to honor what that person that you're caring for, their wishes are, but maybe there's safety reasons that we may want to remove every piece of gun, ammunition, whatever it may be. Maybe there isn't. I'm not sure until we get into that situation and talk to the family to see what's the best priority for that
Each
family.
one's different.
Absolutely.
Each situation, yep.
Yep. And you always want to make sure, you guys know this, you want to make sure that when you have the right home health,
Right.
you want to interview them. You want to make sure you bond with them, that they understand what your goals are, what the family's goals are.
Well, Nancy, time's getting away again.
Again.
Yeah. Could you share your contact information?
Oh,
This
sure.
is a fascinating subject, and some may want to contact you.
So my phone number is 630-761-3600. So 630-761-3600. The website is Dorjath, it's a tough one, D-O-R-J-A-T as in Tom, H as in Harry, so it's DorjathLawCenter.com.
Thank you so much.
Sure, thank you.
Nancy, thanks again. In fact, when we started the show, we were going to talk about 3 subjects today: trust, power of attorney, trust, and medication. We're going to have you back.
Yes.
Well, at least we hit one of the 3, which is, hey, that's moving
It's a
forward.
good one. That's
And
right.
it's just such an important subject to talk
It
to.
is.
So thanks for sharing that with us.
No, thank you for having me.